side soon got the best of him.
There's two kinds of drunks. There's happy drunks and there's violent drunks. And I would get violent.
He just went like totally psycho on some people in this restaurant and almost caused this big fight.
We started to see that he was on the road to killing possibly all of us.
Before they even reached New York, James and Lars were listening to other bands' demos, hoping to find a replacement for Dave Mustaine.
We're playing tapes in the cab of the truck while he's asleep in the back on some stained mattress. I mean, that was the whole ugliness of that U-Haul trip.
Metallica arrived in New York in April of '83. Their first order of business was to rid themselves of Dave Mustaine.
All I remember was waking up and then being circled around me, and I just looked up.
Wake up, Dave, you know.
Get up, you're out of the band. And I said, what, no warning, no second chance?
It was almost like execution style. We just walked in, woke him up, fired him, grabbed him in his and took him down to the bus stop, and the whole thing took, 45 minutes.
I'd seen my dad in a coma and dying, and this was probably more harmful to me than anything I'd ever been through.
Dave spent the next 4 days on a bus bound for Los Angeles, seething over his expulsion.
I hated him. I was so mad at them, and I figured I need to regroup, and I need to start over again, because now I'm going to get revenge. Part of the whole reason why I formed Megadeth was to get back at them.
To the destroyer, we'll cut you down!
Man, here it is. The birthplace of Megadeth.
Mustaine's challenge to Metallica began coming together just 2 months later in his Hollywood apartment complex.
That was Dave Mustaine's apartment right up there.
There was some guy living underneath me.
And I was living right down below.
And he was playing bass first thing in the morning, full blast.
It was Running with the Devil by Van Halen, so I was sitting there going, bum, bum, bum.
I have nothing against Van Halen, but that's the most horrible bass line to listen to if you're hungover.
Bum, bum, bum.
And all of a sudden, I hear this flower pot come smashing down onto my air conditioner. And I heard this guy yelling, "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!"
And it stopped.
The bass player was 18-year-old David Ellefson, a native of the tiny town of Jackson, Minnesota. David had his sights set on rock stardom before he'd graduated middle school.
He formed a little group, probably about 13, 14 years old, and played on the front porch. Mothers made sandwiches and lemonade and invited all the neighbors in and all the kids.
All I wanted to do was be in a rock band. That was it.
In the summer of '83, at just 16, David left Minnesota and headed to LA to chase his dream. Within days, he ran into Dave Mustaine.
Well, these neighbors aren't too friendly here in California like they are back in Minnesota.
I hear this on my door, and I open the door, and there's these two kids.
Gives me this kind of like condescending look. The infamous Mustaine snarl.
And they go, "Hey, you know where to get some cigarettes?" And I went,
"Yeah, down the street at the liquor store," and slams the door in my face.
"Hey, are you old enough to buy beer?" And I said, "Now you're talking."
We hooked up and went down the street, got a case of Heineken.
The rest is history. That's how David Ellefson got in the band.
Mustaine quickly took Ellefson under his wing, introducing him to hard drugs and a frantic musical style.
He was playing this stuff, and I was just, I was mesmerized. I was like, I have never heard anything like that before. That is cool.
The two began auditioning lead singers for the band, but none of them could match Mustaine's intensity.
Dave was driven, you know? I mean, you can almost say that he is possessed in a way. I remember the night that Dave just said, you know, F it, I'm just gonna sing, you know?
Even before the band's lineup was complete, Dave Mustaine had settled on a name for it, a word he'd stumbled upon during his darkest hour.
When I came home from New York in the bus, there was a handbill. I was writing lyrics on the back of everything. I'm bored, so I flip it over, and it's from Senator Alan Cranston, and he says, "The arsenal of Megadeth can't be written." I thought, great song title, so I write the song Megadeth.
But the song turned into Set the World Afire. Megadeth minus 1A became the name of the band.
I remember calling home to talk to my parents, you know, because in Minnesota they talk like the people from Fargo, you know, so they're like, oh yeah, what's the name of the band? And like, Megadeth.
Oh, yeah, you know, Megadeth. Here we go.
Their name was intact. Now Megadeth needed to add to their numbers. In November '83, jazz fusion vet Gar Samuelson arrived for an audition and made a searing impression.
The guy comes, and he falls asleep with a cigarette in his hand, and it burns right clear through his fingers, and I thought, this is rad.
Behind the drum set, it was just like he was like a praying mantis or something, you know? And you just could not see what he was doing. It was something to watch him play.
Gar's fluid playing lended a sense of order to Dave's outrageous riffs. And as the band began playing gigs, the metal audience was all too ready for the man too maniacal for Metallica.
Well, here I come.
The people in the audience were just freaking out, man. I mean, Dave could have told them, all right, go out on the street right now and kill the first person you see, and they would have, you know. That's the kind of vibe it was.
Guitarist Chris Poland, who'd played with Gar Samuelson in a jazz band, instantly went backstage and asked in to Gar's new group. With his lineup complete, Dave Mustaine was finally ready to answer Metallica with a band of his own. Next, Megadeth on a rampage.
It was no bad boy image, man. We were just out of control.
And later, Dave Mustaine gives in to the needle.
I finally realized that, you know, the jig's up. I've lost this battle. I'll never win.
When Behind the Music continues. Just months after his expulsion from Metallica, Dave Mustaine rebounded by forming a rival band called Megadeth. But in the winter of '83, his old bandmates stole his thunder when they released their debut album, Kill 'Em All.
I remember the day Kill 'Em All came out, and I listened to it, and I heard the first song, and my stuff was on there. I was fuming because I told him not to use my music.
His ex-bandmates maintained Dave said nothing of the kind. Still, Mustaine was now more determined than ever to outmuscle Metallica. He sped up the tempo of Megadeth's assault and made his lyrics even more nihilistic.
The mission statement was to have the fastest, utmost heaviest, utmost furious, ultra furious metal band ever.
We didn't care about the future. We just wanted to be the most dangerous band on the planet.
From day one, Megadeth's members made danger a personal mission. Mustaine and Ellefson's appetite for self-destruction was matched by Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson.
That was the first time that I really saw a bona fide heroin addict. I mean, I was like, we ain't in Kansas anymore, Toto.
You want to be great, you had to do heroin. That's straight out of Gar's mouth. And I thought, you know what, I want to be great.
While Chris and Gar were full-blown junkies, Mustaine and Ellefson were soon snorting heroin and mixing it with cocaine, a deadly cocktail known as a speedball.
The heroin helped you come down off the cocaine. Now I knew why everybody did speedballs. I know why they did it. And I forgot that everybody died from it. I forgot that part.
It was no bad boy image, man. We were just out of control.
The band's reckless ways only fed their growing reputation in the metal underground. When Megadeth made a demo tape in the summer of '84, it quickly sparked a bootleg bonanza. Within weeks, the tape fell into the hands of New York record exec Barry Coburn.
Once I heard the cassette, it was like, wow. You know, I mean, we have another Metallica in our hands.
Coburn's Combat Records had financed the label that released Metallica's debut album. He quickly signed Megadeth and rushed the band into the studio.
They gave us $8,000 to make the record. We spent half of that on food and dope. Chris would stop in the middle of a take to go into the bathroom to shoot up, and Gar wouldn't show up for hours because he was buying balloons of heroin. And David Ellefson and I, we always had our amount that we needed to get by.
I would get these frantic calls saying, the studio's a shambles. We've got all this drug paraphernalia here. I mean, it was frightening.
The session's edgy, angry sound was on raw display in Megadeth's debut album, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good. Released in May of '85, the record got good reviews in both metal and mainstream rock magazines. With an album to support, Megadeth began peeling the paint from concert venues from coast to coast. They would rarely come off the road for the next 4 years.
We'd be driving around the country in a motorhome.
Doing heroin and coke every day.
And just psycho. You know, we're out of our minds and playing clubs.
Smoking pot every day and drinking every day.
It's like the closest 4 guys ever get to each other without actually having sex with each other.
But if the band provoked hysteria in the heavy metal underground, they provoked horror in the world above.
We would go into some of these little podunk redneck truck stops, and they kind of look at you like you're the devil incarnate, and then they ask you who you are. Chris gets funny with them, and he goes, "Oh, we're a gospel act."
I go, "MEGADETH." And they'd be, "MEGADETH, huh?"
And you just go, "Oh my God, they're gonna be waiting for us outside with pitchforks right now."
Parents criticized Megadeth for their hellacious looks and violent lyrics. But the music hit a nerve with America's disenfranchised youth.
As a 13-year-old kid, it's everything you're looking for because you're so pissed off at the world. You know what I mean? It just empowers you. I mean, it's just powerful music.
They were truly angry young men.
By the spring of '86, Megadeth was developing a national reputation. Still, it paled next to that of Metallica.
They were leaving us behind. They were taking off. They were doing really good, and it was burning me up, you know?
He hated everything. He hated himself. He hated me. He hated the company. He felt that he could not break through unless he was on a major label.
The band's debut album had sold 100,000 copies, a decent tally for an independent label release, but not good enough for Dave Mustaine.
He was just like a rabid dog, man. He would just be like, "Arr, arr."
There was a tremendous anxiety between label and band and Dave. The last thing we wanted to do was sell Megadeth, but he was in a mode of denial that was kind of scary.
In the summer of '86, Coburn sold Megadeth's contract to Capitol Records. That November, the new label released Megadeth's follow-up album. Peace Sells, But Who's Buying was a quantum leap, both in terms of its quality and its complexity.
What do you mean I could be the president of the United States of America? Tell me something. It's still we, the people, right?
I think the thing that separated Megadeth from a lot of the other heavy metal bands was that it wasn't just, let's see how fast we can play and let's see how many demons and devils we can sing about. Dave Mustaine liked to really write about lyrics that meant something.
Peace Sells did sell. Audiences ate up the record critics called classic thrash metal, and it quickly moved 500,000 copies. But that didn't make Dave or the band any happier.
We were starting to become more reclusive, and in fact, there was a lot of infighting starting to happen in the band.
I don't know if this happens in other rock bands, but they were just literally like trying to kill each other, you know?
I swear to God, it was like Fight Club.
The room would be destroyed, you know? And it was like, you'd come in and you go, well, how did the bed break in half? You know, the bed just doesn't break in half, you know? And they're like, I don't know, you know, it, you know, just get another bed in here, you know?
In the winter of '86, Megadeth was hired to open for Alice Cooper on a lengthy concert tour. Even rock's resident bad boy was stunned by Megadeth's partying habits.
Basically, on a level of just telling him, look, I've done it all. I've seen it all. It doesn't work. You cannot, especially a show with your intensity. You're gonna burn right out.
The last thing he said was you guys be careful out here. And we were just like, what's he talking about? You know?
The band ignored repeated pleas from friends to slow down. But after years of hardcore drug abuse, Dave Mustaine was beginning to crack up.
You know, he had literally lost his mind, where he was saying to me, Scott, you have to, you know, you gotta check out my arm right here. There's something moving underneath there. And he's like, they're all over me, you know, their bugs are all over me, they're crawling all over me, you know, and I had never experienced anything like that, seen anybody in such bad shape.
Chris and Gar weren't doing much better. Looking to increase their already prodigious drug intake, they asked Dave, the group's sole songwriter, for an increased share of Megadeth's profits. When Dave refused, Chris started pawning the band's gear to feed his growing habit.
I was a drug addict, man. It's not something I'm proud of, and I can look back and laugh now, and I'm lucky I can, you know?
We just realized it was done. It wasn't going to work with those two in the band anymore.
Chris and Gar were fired, and soon longtime road manager Scott Menzies walked away on his own, unwilling to witness Dave's demise.
I figured Dave would just die, and that would be it, you know, and I didn't want to be there to see that, you know.
Next, Mustaine and Ellefson bottom out.
We're 4 albums into Megadeth's career and didn't have a dime to my name.
And later, Megadeth loses a member of the family.
I pretty much came to the conclusion that the music world had lost a true giant.
When Behind the Music continues. By the summer of '87, just 4 years after the band was born, Megadeth seemed on the verge of a meltdown. Gar Samuelson and Chris Poland had been fired, and David Ellefson and Dave Mustaine were strung out on crack cocaine.
I would do that first hit of crack and I would be gone for 3 days, 5 days sometimes. Once I put something into my body, I can't stop.
I mean, I was definitely his partner in crime and slime all the way down.
Amazingly, the drug abuse didn't derail Megadeth. In January '88, with Jeff Young on guitar and Chuck Baylor on drums, the band released So Far, So Good, So What?